Hello and welcome to the skating lesson. I'm Dave Lees.
And I'm Jonathan Byer. Hi, Dave.
Hi, Jonathan. How are you?
I'm just lovely. Thanks for asking.
This and that. We are going to be discussing everything going on in the figure skating world this week. So if you're new here, please subscribe below. Smash that like button. This is our gift to you. Yes.
With a slightly smaller budget than the gift we saw. Yeah.
We need to break this down. Jonathan, I have to say,
wait, just for context. So we're talking about, is this called The Gift?
Yeah, this is the Yuzuru Hanyu one-man show from the end of February in the Tokyo Dome called Gift, or The Gift. And it was on Disney Plus, and they've delayed it since it was broadcast on other countries. You know, it was available other places first. And I have to say, I was disappointed for what it could do for skating because it wasn't edited for a US audience in a very inviting way. And I don't know why that was, if this was just an add-on. Obviously, the US isn't their biggest audience, but in terms of even growing him as a sports star, although, you know, he's not currently continuing, I thought it was a missed opportunity because it is essentially a video of the entire performance, which is great, right? But, you know, obviously there are costume changes and one person can only skate so much, right? So in the middle, there are these films that are in Japanese. And yes, you can put on subtitles, but I'm thinking for the average person who doesn't know Yuzuru Hanyu and who's
signing into Disney Plus from somewhere in North America, Europe, anywhere else. Yeah.
Yes. I don't think it catches their attention quickly enough. We live in a culture where you're competing for someone's attention. They can lose attention very quickly. And frankly, the fact that it's not auto subtitled, the fact that there are these breaks that, you know, they didn't produce videos in English explaining who he is or about any of this. I just think it's all not packaged as well as it could be to really endear new people to him, right? He has tremendous
the broadcast itself. Yeah, because what it ended up like, the show looked great.
Yeah.
As a viewer consuming it through a streaming service, I also was surprised by it felt more like a live stream.
Yes.
Yeah, like when we watch a competition, we're just watching the empty ice waiting, which again, in the context of a show makes total sense. But if you're delivering it as a production, I thought there were some things they could have done.
Yeah, because oftentimes when like Netflix has shown different concerts, you know, they break it up or they show different pieces and things like that. I just thought it was a really missed opportunity because even myself, like I fast forwarded through these films, right, that I frankly don't really care about because you know that what its purpose is. It's just packaging. And I mean, if you love Yuzuru Hanyu and you want to watch a billion, you know, images of his face shown again and again in different ways, you know, that's interesting to you. I wanted to see actual skating. I thought, you know, the opening was fantastic. And there were the numbers that he really performed. It was also interesting to see like a one-person show. What can the body do? There were some numbers that looked like he was sort of like walking through the choreography a bit to like rest. And then
conserve energy. It's a huge ask to do that long, that much with that content. Yeah.
But the things that he went for, oh, did he go for? And it was fascinating. I mean, he said at the end, I watched a little bit of that interview. It was very much like what you would ask a famous person, you know, oh, this is my gift for the audience. You know, they're giving me so much support. That's the story, yada, yada. Okay. The highlight of this thing for me is when he redoes the Olympic short program, which maybe that's what we want, but I was riveted in a weird way by seeing someone who is a laser focused driven athlete recreate their entire preparation for the program down to, it looked like he was pointing at imaginary people as he was going down in the warm-up.
And like acknowledging coaches that weren't standing there in this version. Yeah.
Yes, and like a nodding and stuff, which made me wonder if that's all choreographed, because, you know, skaters do choreograph your warm-up. And like before competitions with my coaches, like I will do the 5-minute warm-up exactly as we're going to do it. And then we will do the program so much so that it's automatic.
Right.
And sometimes like doing the warm-up in practice is actually like nerve-wracking. When like, okay, this is the one shot and then I'm gonna do it, because you play stupid mind games and build things in your head as you go forward. So it was interesting to watch him do this in front of an audience. The theatricality of it was next level.
And so just to be clear, like this was like what, 40 minutes in? So he's doing these spectacular showy numbers, like the Firebird with all the actual massive flames that are just like erupting around the arena and very cool looking. And then they just wipe it all clean, bring up all the lights, and just recreate an exact simulation of the full 6-minute warm-up, the Winnie the Pooh, the announcer.
Not just the announcer saying what they would read out over like the PA system, like Yuzuru Hanyu has won. And they were talking about the slam that he won, all of his titles. He had the tissue box there. He went like down below. He did all of it. But the key thing for me is, remember when we had Doug Ha? I don't remember if he said this to us or on the show or off, but he was talking about the doctor that Yuzu has with him, who's like, maybe like an acupuncturist, energy doctor, whatever it was. I don't think that Doug Ha got his medical credentials. Okay, I don't think that this was like reviewed with Doug Ha, who had an understanding of what this doctor was. And it's the doctor, you'll see him sometimes, really like helping his energy, his mind, his focus, which is super important to an athlete. Doug Ha was like, that's his voodoo doctor. You're like, right. But seeing him here, because you see Yuzu do something that I was fascinated by at the very end of his warm-up. He does something where he goes like behind his ears.
And like the pressure points. 100%.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, I was mesmerized by like what is going on here, because he was doing all of it. So I think it was interesting to see his full warm-up routine without like anyone else to distract like what he is doing. So
the camera on him the whole time. I love seeing him intentionally raise the shoulders in a tense way so that he can then totally release them in the other way. I think whatever he does to get in that zone, and he gets in a zone more than anyone else does or has, in my opinion, when he skates. So it is like watching a ritual, that warm up with these sort of like blinders up, sort of focusing, body centering sorts of ideas that are less about jump repetition and frantic flailing around the arena in those moments, but really finding his center.
Yes, which is some of his genius, right? And then you see him like going over the left arm for the sow takeoff and how he doesn't want that arm to move. And I remember when we had Corey Cercelli on Seal Live during COVID, he was saying that Yuzu would do his warm-up and then get off the ice and prepare to wait for 40 minutes before getting back on to run his long program. Like he would simulate the competition at least several times a week or whatever it was. And, which is brilliant in that way to do that time. I mean, I think Nancy Kerrigan has said in different interviews that she would prepare before 94 doing her program at like different intervals to be prepared for any scenario, which is also, just, I mean, it's neurotic as any get out, but it does build that confidence that you've done this 1,000 times.
You've done it drawing first, you've done it going last. Yeah. It just takes all the unknowns, that many more unknowns away. Yeah.
I mean, look, is it a little bit unusual for a show? Yes. Was it on brand with what we think about Yuzuru Hanyu as an athlete? Listen, I was like, all right, this is the absolute highlight of the show. Yeah.
I liked that it was this homage to competition itself, because even though there were some pieces we had seen before and all these sorts of things, and the production was just through the roof on this thing. All the screens and the videos and the smoke and the fire and all this sort of stuff. So it was kind of nice as someone who really does, in his heart of hearts, prefer competitive venues for skating as opposed to shows. It gave me that. It quenched the thirst for like full-blown competitive energy.
Yeah. I do think that given that he likes competition and production, it made me think that he should have some sort of professional competitions with other skaters.
I mean, look at how beautifully he was skating, how well he was jumping, like it's all right there.
It also made me think, so he's done so many IJS like variations. I would be interested to see him do choreography that was a little bit more creative and less restrictive on the rules to see what he could do, because I was just looking at his physicality and what he can do is so, like, he's so flexible, right? And at the same time, so physically strong. And he can, when you really watch him go into the axle, like his body's completely relaxed before he goes up. He has that, you know, Japanese kind of technique and the way that they try to conserve energy and ride the edge into a takeoff. And it was just really interesting to watch. So I'd be curious to see what he could do, and also something different.
Such artistry through the massive rigid restrictions of IJS to sort of be like, you don't have those restrictions anymore. Sky's the limit. I think he's just begun his creative output if he really goes further with it and doesn't feel the need to still adhere to IJS ideology. Yeah,
because at this point, I feel like we've seen him rehash these programs a lot, and they have a lot of significance for people, and I feel like he's paid that homage. So in the next iteration, I would like to see him be more creative and do something completely different that we haven't seen. But he seems to identify more as an athlete than an artist per se. So just, I think of what we've seen from his competitive or professional outlets so far, then the YouTube channel redoing all of the programs again and again, and then here doing that. But it would be interesting to see him do different things and different kinds of music and choreography. And
yeah, I mean, and again, each new thing they did in this production blew my mind with how much more money that must have cost. The live orchestras out there, and then the pop singers, and then the different, I mean, it was just incredible. And it was full, this stadium. It was sensational to see.
Yeah,
it did almost have, and it was interesting because of all that production. You had the main rink, and then they had like the two band shells on the side, and then all of this open space for the other effects. It almost had the energy of like an Olympic opening ceremony.
Yes.
In some ways, like how vast and extensive it was.
So for the Jonathan Byer one-man show, like, what do you want to redo from your life that you could do in front of the audience?
That's the thing. I would be one that wants to do new.
Yeah.
So,
but do you think he's baiting the fans a little bit to give them what they want to create? He knows how to have fun with and stoke the frenzy a bit, which you have to do the same way that Taylor Swift does with her fans by like dropping clues over what's coming next. Like, he knows what the fan base wants to excite them, right?
Yeah, and again, even in Thank You Canada, this gift is indulging every fan's dream, you know, and it clearly worked, and that was clearly what it was designed to do. Yeah.
So what do you want to redo, Jonathan? Is there a performance you would like to recreate? You could have the
several. Yes. And it's interesting also, like, even if given the chance, how would one redo those? Like, so for instance, like, what always has blown my mind about the skating is that you are warming up in front of everyone.
Yeah.
And as a singer, I don't want anyone near my warm up. I need to be without an audience. I need to just have my blinders up, sorting my way through things. So the fact that his is quasi-performative, quasi-staged, and everyone is watching you work through warming up, that's always what would throw me. The thing about like opera for me is that there are so many external circumstances that influence how I do it. So I would want to go back and do this production, but with a different director or with a different soprano. And maybe I'll try this instead. But it was interesting. Like, I don't know what his personal take on the Beijing experience really was. So it was interesting that he chose to go back and redo it.
Well, he knows that his fans certainly have opinions on it. You would have to be blind, deaf, and dumb to not know that short program.
Yeah.
That's why it was so genius that he did it at the same time.
Yep. I mean, and the same idea as you're talking about these.
He should have had judges there to score him, Jonathan. If you're going to go that far, why not have the judges give you the scores that you feel you deserve? Okay, like, let's
stage it into the production. Amazing. But I mean, in the same way, like if you go see one of your favorite artists, there is that fan base that really just wants the classic stuff they already know. And then when that artist is pushing from the upcoming album or something, it's like, But I'm always interested in what comes next.
Yeah. So it's so funny. Last week we discussed in here comebacks and how Simone Biles is getting people intrigued. And Gabby Douglas has been training with Valerie Lukin for at least half a year, if not a little bit longer. She's been training longer than Simone, in fact. And it was so interesting with Simone and this comeback because Simone was also dropping breadcrumbs, but the Simone fan base, I was talking to someone who follows both sports, he said, it's like the Hanyu on steroids in a sense, except for the fact that, you know, they're more American, right? So it's not seen as other, but because Simone, you know, has overcome things about race, things about being a foster care, having a different type of body that's into gymnastics, and then the mental, well, there's the sexual abuse, and then there is the fact that she had the twisties at the last Olympics. There's almost nothing you could say about Simone that like you can't say a thing, okay? Like, right?
Yeah.
And it excited people. But then Gabby Douglas also has her own fan base and the sense of that there was a very weird scenario. There are people that feel that she didn't belong in the last team. There are people that feel that it's racist to say that she didn't belong. There are people that say, well, she didn't belong, but she proved herself, so shut your mouth and whatever. She, at the last Olympics, didn't get her full bar routine construction back, right? And there are so many fans that have like debated what her routine could have been at the last Olympics, and whether she could have been more competitive, yada, yada. So she announced her comeback officially, because they've said that she's training, but she's never like posted anything herself on social media. She showed a clip of herself training a combination, almost to like know what fans want to see and to like raise that potential, and just put it out there last week that she's coming for 2024. And the number of fans who have started contacting me to be like, well, is this a real comeback? What's happening? Like the amount of like skaters who pay attention in the summer, but like know what's going on are so keyed in now with these comebacks. So a comeback like Yuzu would be so huge if he chose to do it. Even for like one season, it would be mesmerizing.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I have a couple of questions on that. So the one is, am I mistaken? Like I always viewed Gabby as almost a full generation before
she is.
the other comebacks we're talking
So Gabby
about.
won the Olympics in 2012. Simone won it in 2016, started to win Worlds in 2013. And Gabby came back for 2016 when Simone did win. She was second in 2015 at Worlds. And then they have Sunisa Lee, who wound up winning in 2021 when Simone had the twisty. So the last three Olympic all-around champions are all in training for these next Olympics, which is obviously huge for gymnastics, because the secret there that no one wants to talk about is that the US has had a lack of organization and they haven't been developing talent along the same way. There's also been a lot of retirements, a lot of coaches who have been sidelined for being abusive, safe sport. And as you watch, there's shifting generations. Alicia Sacramone and Chelsea are in charge. The camps haven't found their rhythm. You know, they've gone through different leaders, and they're now really kind of like helping bridge this gap, because by having so many stars at the top, they're making everybody more competitive to make the team. And you're not noticing that there's like a delta underneath, because you have all of these incredible stars. And now if you look at the list of like who is going, like they're going to leave a world champion off of the team at the next Olympics, like almost guaranteed. So it's very, I think, exciting for people.
The other thing that intrigues me, like, so sometimes when we see skaters post a jump and an element, something like that, of course, the first thing we have to remember is that this is not in context, all of this sort of stuff. But I would imagine gymnastics works so differently because those elements are in isolation and there is not necessarily a full program always around what they're doing. So do you find like the video footage, for instance, that Gabby showed is more indicative of something that actually is really possible right now for her competitively?
I think it would be possible for her. I mean, she has to do the entire routine, and that's obviously likely why she's not coming back before she's ready until she has full stamina and confidence that she has an older body to get ready. So, you know, kind of take that time and going slowly is smart. But I think that it's very similar. I mean,
Yeah.
the same way, like in a bar routine, like the stamina is and the different combinations, but the same thing in skating, like putting a jump into a program is very different than doing it in isolation. And then putting it in a program in competition is, you know, very different. So, I mean, there's always, especially in adult skating, they always talk about like the competition camel versus the regular camel, because adults will always miss it in competition because of the entrance when you're nervous and going into it. So, yeah, and there's all of those factors. So, but I'm curious to see.
Certainly spikes it up. I'm more, I mean, as someone who enjoys it when he sees it,
Yeah.
but I don't necessarily follow it so closely, but this has definitely piqued my interest.
And the good thing is that these gymnasts make money, right? Like they are coming back. A lot of them make significant income and have been in documentaries before. Hopefully with a writer's strike and an actor's strike, they will fund some of these documentaries over the next year to really raise interest and have them on the streaming services before the Olympics, because that is a perfect way to really generate a lot of interest for it. So yeah, yeah, and hopefully with skating as well, but who knows? I mean, yeah.
But also interesting because again, they're putting out all these videos, there's all this news, all this sort of stuff. We also saw a series of videos that were coming out of Russia. Is that part of like a Sambo 70 PR team that was putting those together?
That's on its first channel. It's channel 1, which is state owned, but they're the ones that have good relationships with Tutberidze. They're the ones that had the disagreement with Trusova's father. So she used to be featured on First Channel. Now she isn't. She has a contract with the outlet Match TV, but of course she's not doing much skating. She did perform to her own song that she recorded to Wings.
Yeah.
There wasn't much to say about her skating to it.
Yeah.
She's diminished in ability and interest, and it was a stunt, right? It was.
Yeah. But in the videos we were watching this week, I mean, there were.
So we saw 2 comebacks this week with what they posted. We saw Petrosian and Maya Khromykh. We also, I really nailed that name there. I'm just patting myself on the back. And then we saw Daniil Samsonov and Arseny Fedotov. I thought the Arseny and the Daniil video was interesting in terms of the trajectory and wondering, why is Daniil doing this at this point? It never happened for him at the senior level, but you can see he's trying to get the jumps back. The rap is so omnipresent. Are they going to ship him off to another country? Could he even make the team? What country would he go for? Italy?
Again, knowing they go through that footage. So this is what they felt comfortable sharing.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting to watch their warm-up exercises and then see what they can. I mean, Arseny is probably the most talented skater that Team Tutberidze has right now, including Akacheva and Petrosian. He just looks to be in his prime more and have the total package of star quality, like presentation, personality. Petrosian and certainly Akacheva doesn't seem to have that magnetic personality in the same way. So I thought it was interesting because Russia's running low on stars, right? As you think, like their ratings aren't as good as they were. These skaters aren't as big of stars. And the longer that they're held out of international competition, they don't have, like they're not beating the world to generate interest. So they really have to create moments or accomplishments to generate that interest. So I'm intrigued. What do you think about Maya coming back or Daniil? Like, do you think this is to like shop out to other countries?
I don't know, actually. Like, I also don't know if this is sort of to perpetuate, like they can last longer. They're not really gone, kind of.
Yeah.
Because still, when we were watching the excerpts with Maya in them, again, as someone who's never done triple jumps, like something about it still looks rather painful to me. She doesn't she doesn't seem to be thriving yet. She seems to be forcing a performance for the videos, in my opinion. But I guess I'm fascinated by their own motivation. I mean, they really must believe they can.
Plus, there are only so many slots in any of these competitions. They're trying to simulate a Grand Prix without that many stars.
Right.
So someone like Maya could get a bronze medal at some of these domestic events and get into the final, so to speak, right? If she does her job. I wonder if that Putin money is enough to keep them going, right? To set themselves up. I mean, we did see like Taras Morozov extend by at least a year last year, perhaps that they wouldn't do. We see Stepanova and Bukin back into training after having children, right? We see Boikova and Kozlovsky moving to Eteri. Some of this has to be financially motivated. Some of them must think that they can go back to competition. And you have to wonder, will Team Tutberidze and the Federation, shop some of these lower ranked skaters out to other countries before the next Olympics to make sure that they have money coming in, because the financial incentives are not what they were in Russia. Russia is struggling economically in some respects. I think more and more we see, with the latest developments in the war and with Prigozhin and things like that. So you have to wonder, will Maya be on a different team? Will Samsonov be on a different team?
Because you mean it would behoove Maya personally, financially, to go to another country, but the federation doesn't.
No, it would behoove Eteri financially for Maya to go to another federation. Perhaps the Russian federation.
Even though she's representing Italy. I understand. Okay.
Because, listen, Maya is probably never going to be world champion, right? But she could be on a team and help Italy in the team event if they could get her.
In need of that help in the women's discipline. Yeah.
She could go to Hungary, right? I think the same thing for someone like Daniil is possible, right? He could be, I don't know his background, right? But, there's countries like Israel or Hungary or Italy that are in that team event, looking to Georgia, right? I would pay close attention to the Georgian Federation and Eteri. They have to replace Maurici as their male skater, especially with Diana and Gleb representing Georgia. I would look at, filling out that team event for the next Olympics. So
it was also interesting because they were showing lots of Boikova and Kozlovsky. Mm-hmm. And it was interesting to see them doing so much off-ice work, which of course we know that's like a part of it. And then it's interesting what would happen sometimes in their throws, for example, that would make me nervous, are like the landing positions don't seem always stable, let's say, or something like that. And I wonder, even as they're nailing these incredible elements off ice, have you found it like, what does the off ice really help you with most with like those big elements? Rotation in general, takeoffs? Because I was curious as we saw it go back to the ice, it was sort of the landings I was wishing they would sort of clean up a little bit more.
The Russians really brought that off ice into the sport. Like they really developed that into a science. But going back, right, in terms of that being done. Now everybody does this. I think it gives you your body awareness, your positioning, right? Learning the axle off ice to on ice, it does teach you that rotation, and you do learn it more quickly, right? To do it and to do it. I did it all the time until I rolled my ankle so many times that I stopped doing it. At a certain point, it's become like a mental thing that I'm almost like afraid to do it because my ankles are shot as an old person. But I will say that it is extremely helpful. You're learning where to put your arm in the air, right? You're learning how to do these things. And I think it's interesting is that when I talked to Galina about when she had the full, when she was basically like the Eteri of the men, right? And what she would do. And she told me a really fascinating thing about what she would do in off ice in Ukraine, because they were in Odessa on the beach, right? And what I think is a little bit different about Russia than the other countries is that, after the Team Tutberidze tour, they all take the same break, right? Where they go on vacation. And she told me what she did first. And Katya and Sergey kind of mentioned this Katya mentions this in her book about her and Sergey, where they go to a camp for dry land training. And one of the things that the Russians do is they start getting them ready off ice before they bring things on ice. So a lot of times they talk about like restoring elements, and you'll see in these early videos that they're not just like going back. So what she would do is she had them like all do some like crazy off ice exercise. Then she would have them do ballet in a second floor room that was not air conditioned, and they were in like 95-degree heat, and they were basically doing like hot ballet.
Ballet, yeah.
And you can see Victor doing ballet in one of the things, and she's like, and then I would have them play soccer on the beach with each other barefoot. So they're all running on the beach, and then they would like work out again. Something, I forget what she said, or they would do off ice jumps, but like they would not be skating. And they did this for maybe 3 weeks to get back in shape and to get in better physical shape than before they then go onto the ice, and then they restore their elements. So it's like a different philosophy. And this is like the 80s, right? But it was still interesting to learn about that kind of philosophy of all of that.
Because again, her skaters still have beautiful glide and ride out and all this sort of stuff. I just, like, it would be so heartwarming to see everyone doing giant open axles for like trajectory and glide and speed in and out would be so.
Yuzu did it in his warm up. Did you see he did? Well, not a complete open axle, but a very,
But that shows up in his skating then, in my opinion.
I mean, not an open axle in the way that Robin Cousins would do it. I'm just trying to make before his viewer, his fans come. Yeah. So I think, interesting, right?
I would be curious for a team like Boikova and Kozlovskii would be to see more of that kind of training instead of just rotational training, which we've almost learned to associate exclusively as Russia's priority.
Well, it looked like they were redoing some of their throw technique, perhaps. I would have to like ask Deanna Stellato to break it down or something, or someone like it, or Megan, or, it looked like they were trying to redo some of their technique to stabilize the quad that they're obviously going to put in this season. Right. So I thought it was exciting because, listen, they're going all out against Mishina Galyamov, and I'm sure Moskvina doesn't want to lose either. I'm sure that there's some hard feelings there between them. So I am interested to see.
Yeah, it should be a very interesting matchup between those two also.
And I didn't see Tarasova and Morozov in the background, but I did see, I think, Osokina with that big red hair at one point skating in the background. So it does look like that pair school at a Terry's rink is certainly building up. But they didn't show a Terry working with. Then they showed Trankov and they showed Pavel. So Pavel's the guy that took the photo when I took a photo with the Terry in Boston. Yes. Yeah.
He's your photographer.
Yes, that's how I will always remember him, is that like he was like standing in like next to her to kind of like guard her as everyone was going up to her. And she was like, "Oh, you want a photo with me?" Of all, yes. So
I do. Yeah. So funny.
That was such a moment. But he's become like a real hair coach to pay attention to in Russia. So we also saw a couple other things. Let's talk about Roman Sadovsky. So
yes,
he hasn't posted as much as usual on YouTube. We know he has a Marie France program, but he showed himself working, I think, with Mark Pillay on his free skate.
Yeah.
But he didn't show us the music. He only showed us them like.
How are we watching you construct a program but never hearing the sound of the?
And then like really never seeing them, like you don't know what is what, like what is the entrance for. It was almost like edited like a 10-minute reel.
Yeah.
Okay.
10-second reel. Yeah.
But it was endless. And I think skaters would. What do we want to see? What do we not want to see? Listen, he's extremely talented, and it's obviously beautiful to watch him skate. I do think there are missed opportunities. Like, I would rather he be honest with the audience. I think it would be really interesting to have him like edit together his quad toes and talk about where his consistency is at this point in the season and be really direct with people. if Roman were working on his mental game and talked about his mental approach and how he's changing his training, that he's going to do his warm up and his short program every day, and he like walked us through something like that, I think that would be really interesting and build momentum on his channel to where everybody would want it, right? I find that there's like some of the skaters in general and men are like afraid to show things. And he seems really afraid to talk about what's going on while always referencing what's going on without actually talking about it. So he doesn't tell us what he was feeling when he competed, right? He doesn't go into it, but he talks around it. And then you don't know if they really have a plan or not. I just think that there are big missed opportunities in his training or not. Do you expect anything different this season for him?
I mean, it's one of those things I always seem most drawn to, these beautiful artists that break my heart time and time again. Obviously, they're their own people and they're dealing with their own hardships themselves, but it's almost made me like wary to like any one person too much, because I tend to like these people that just like make it so difficult for me. And Roman is among them. His musicality, when that quad sow is cooking, there's nothing.
He's the most gorgeous line and extension.
He has everything I want in a skater, but is admittedly, as a fan, I am very weary of getting behind him. Not that I don't want to support him, not that I don't want him to do well, but it becomes an emotional toll to root for someone that has sort of told you they may not be the most reliable person to root for.
I am fearful of this season for him. When I watch every video, I'm intrigued. It looks like he's putting a lot of creative energy into this season, and it looks like he dug deep to get excited for this season after.
That would be so hard, of course, yeah.
But I don't get the sense from what he has shown us or the vibe of the videos that he's really figured out what happened and what he needs to change going forward.
And may not for a long time. I mean, I always have to keep in mind also the age of these people and how much like self-growth occurs like way down the line. So I don't even know that he knows, or if he does know, is he not able and or ready to talk about it? It must be so personable and vulnerable in all these ways. But for the greater good, like you're saying, I think people would tune in droves for a real, honest, vulnerable conversation about the way things have gone down and the way he's trying to pivot or how he's handling it is so much more identifiable for everyone. It doesn't matter the
hard to compete under a microscope, right? And especially when he has this talent for film editing, right? That he wants to work on with his craft, but that also opens him up to people following him more and the pressure that comes with that. Yeah. And I get a sense that could be hard for him, right? That pressure, and it's with his potential. It's because he's so good and has all of these gifts and all of these.
Yeah. And again, what probably makes him such an incredible artist on the ice is this sensitivity. And we have known many skaters, like Jeremy Abbott was also one. When you come with this artist sensibility, it doesn't always translate to this sort of ferocious competitor energy at the same time.
It's the opposite of Yuzuru, right? So what Yuzuru did with that warm-up is he is being so dialed into telling you that he is practicing everything that he needs to do to be successful. Roman almost hides from that in his video. He's like showing you things, but not talking about any of it, to where you don't know if his process is as thought out as what Yuzuru is doing. And Jeremy was almost like this too, where they're almost afraid to be that focused. I think Nancy Kerrigan talked about that, to be afraid to put 1,000% in and to be focused, because do you really have it or not, right? And I think that is interesting with Roman. There does seem like the fear of self-sabotage, right? About what's going on. I don't know if that's a thing or not, but I'd be very curious to watch all of that.
Yeah. It's got to, the head game these athletes must have to deal with are so intense.
It's weird because on one hand, he's making himself vulnerable with these videos, but then he's not because he's editing around the core of what everybody wants to discuss, right?
And we're not talking about the person, we're talking about a shoulder roll in this moment. That'll look good, you know, and that's also lovely. But again, I think something that we all identify with is struggle in any way. And to see someone navigate, admit how to move forward, like that, it's such a universal message, even if you're not a skater or a skating fan. That could
I wonder how naturally talented he is. So we interviewed Oksana this week, and at one point she was like, you know, Michelle's the opposite of me. I'm very naturally talented and lazy, and she's very hardworking. She goes, and you wonder, like, did Roman have a lot of natural talent compared to other skaters where now, you know, what that happens is at a certain point, it thins all out, and then you have to strive harder and it becomes challenging.
Yeah. That the struggle, I mean, and of course, I find this in music all of the time, these sort of like wunderkind proteges or something, even in singing, that enter their undergraduate degree and they are flying high. And it might be, one doesn't want to say accidental, but it's almost accidental. Like it just, whatever is so natural for them, they're not thinking about it. Well, everyone around them is struggling to put together these foundational blocks. And then as this category of people start to really thrive, then this naturally talented group over here hits a road bump and sort of can't figure it out because they were just sort of, I don't want to say winging it in a dismissive way, but it was just all so natural and they didn't have to think about it in other ways. And then you hit a point in the career where you have to.
You know, Oksana was talking about that she never did full programs until she was a professional working with Sarah Kawahara, and her body had completely changed during the season when she was struggling and coming back and doing the Chicago program with the hat, right? She was saying that when she was with Galileo, she was so young and in shape that she never did full programs. They would do sections. And then when, you know, she started changing and things got hard is when she had to do it. And you wonder what people could have achieved if they had done full programs. And you wonder if that's part of the secret of Bateri, is that she's one of the first coaches that have made people do that, in addition to Dr. Shevetsky, right? But she has made them do that full pro times 1,000, but she has made them do those full programs.
She has made them consistent as a result. And that was always the thing. We got wildly talented people from Russia often that skated in a wild way, and it was unpredictable if they were going to make it to the end or not. Yeah.
That's part of what Frank's genius was, right? Is that he made them do that full program, right? And I think for years the US was cleaning up in singles because the skaters did the full program, right? The Russian skaters might have had better technique for years, but they couldn't trade it and they would sink in.
I do agree with Oksana with that assessment.
Yeah, I think it was interesting. She also went nuts watching Dick Button's like old footage about what he could do with his knees and the axles and spins and stuff like that. So that was interesting to put some of that on. We also see that Luna Hendricks is like really becoming the new Ashley Wagner. And you know what? Someone has to lean into it. So Jonathan, they may not be like for you, but she's skating to Living for Love by Madonna, which, you know, a later Madonna song, not my most excited favorite, but you know what, Madonna's had a rough patch. We can celebrate this. And then she's doing Madonna and Beyonce for the free. So she's to Break My Soul. So she's like really leaning into these fan groups. Perhaps it'll boost some of her appeal on social media and her brand. So I'm all
for it if she actually loves it.
Yeah.
Again, I still hold my stance that I had last season also, where I wonder if she loves it or if her team loves it.
Well, I think she loves this more than whatever that free skate was last year that got changed and hacked and dismembered. So yeah.
I'll be intrigued. I will be intrigued.
I'll be intrigued. She's another one where, you know, last season started and it nosedived, right? So you know, she went on tour and, you know, found love or, you know, and just new experience. Maybe she's reinvigorated for this season because this season looks like it's wide open, right? We talked last week about how Cowrie is, you know, year 3 at being at the top. There could be some vulnerability there. Boikova is coming back, but skating to Coldplay. That is her fix you. You know where this, Jonathan, because she was injured last season. She wants to fix herself, right?
She and Amber Glenn can go listen to music in a dark room and cry together while it rains outside. Yeah. But again, I think this season, as you in particular were really noting last year, that the rise of the Korean women was happening, and it was happening now. And I think that will only continue to grow next season, as well as this sort of like, trying to think of the right terminology, the second crop of Japanese women that are really ready to be making some moves.
Yeah, Mai Mihara got a lot of medals last season. I'm wondering, will she be as competitive this year? Was that her sweet spot last year? What about Luna, Hyein Lee, Yelim Kim? We don't know what Youngyu, if she's up or down or here or there.
Or Yelim, really, because again, she had some really high highs and some really low lows throughout that season.
Yeah.
But still a giant step forward.
And with the American women, who knows about any of them?
Yeah.
We did see that Star Andrews was at a camp with Jason Brown. Jason announced like his program, kind of like a singer-songwriter with some blues vibe with other things.
Sure.
Interesting, right? He seems to have a direction for his.
That's someone you trust with the material. I'm like,
yeah,
I believe you. If you tell me it's going to work, I absolutely believe you that it will.
And a Roheen creation. I do wish that Cowrie had stuck with it.
Right. I think what he could have done, he could have taken her further.
Yeah.
This season. I don't know what that.
You're both unique enough, right? Like Roheen's a unique animal. As we saw at the Ice Theater of New York with that costume, right? He's not every day, right?
No, he is not basic in any way, shape, or form. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And Cowrie is so like powerful and talented and not cookie cutter. So
yeah, agree. And the Marie France the programs were very nice for Cowrie. I understood what she was trying to get Cowrie to do and grow her and all this sort of stuff. But it did sort of create like a more expected kind of program.
I just love the end, that last pose of Cowrie's short program last season. I thought it was so cool. Yeah, so I'm disappointed that we are not seeing another collaboration from them.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know. And this week it starts the Dallas Classic. So we're seeing Brooke Tufts go against Lucas. They have quite the mini rivalry in solo dance, and they do like a lot of joint interviews, but are both very competitive against each other, whether or not they admit this as to their coaching staff.
You know where I stand. Yeah.
Well, I love that he posted a video of himself getting this like super high score, and he has the most intense reactions you've ever seen, as well as entrances into his program that could like put Yuzuru Hanyu to shame in terms of theater.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited to
old Russian ice dance vibes. Yeah, the choreographed like amazing. How do we watch that? Do they stream that anywhere, or is that primarily?
If they both do well, I am sure that we will see their competitions. I'm sure that we will see, but we see that Jeffrey Chen has a new partner, but he's skating in junior. So I find that this is one of the things that I find about the rules of ice dance that are like a little bit ridiculous, right? Is that, all right, he's been at like US Nationals as a senior and is now stepping back, right? And having a new partner in junior. Not that there's anything like ostensibly wrong with it if you can do it, but just feels
Do they think they would just get more assignments or opportunities or something because the field is less?
Maybe and the partner might be younger, right? But I always get the feeling like, is this a partnership that's going to last? And I don't know that I feel like if you're going to a partner that's so young that this is really sustainable. I don't know.
Well, one wonders.
Right? Like, are we on the path, or is this like?
And even his just mindset of being like here and now, yeah, now.
Is this like a one-season partner of Danny O'Shea, or are we going the long haul? Although he and the current partner seem to be doing better, at least on Instagram. For what we can see, they look improved. So, yeah.
Great.
Yeah, whatever. I'm not paying for it. So, also, Irina Rodnina, I'm doing a big As the Blade Turns about the Sotnikova comments and Valyeva and different things, and diving into the Icarus rabbit hole, because you know that they made a sequel to Icarus that was at a film festival and Netflix is not releasing it, and they didn't comment on why.
I feel like Netflix's releases anything.
Yes, their quality control has gone.
I wonder what, like, they thought it was just not relevant enough, or is like kind of boring, or just not well made. Was it made by the same people?
Same people.
Huh. In all honesty, the Icarus movie started a little bit slow for me when it was primarily about him doing it as a cyclist. And then when it took the turn, I was all in.
I wonder if it's too real, about if there's something in there that's too...
They don't want to mess it. They don't want to touch it.
You know, they said that there was a Russian plant in the US Immigration Department that alerted them of when he was going to have his asylum hearing, which was not publicized, right? And they brought up drug trafficking charges and filed them that same day. And if you have drug trafficking charges against you from another country, you cannot file for asylum. So that took like 2 years for him to then have his hearing. So you wonder, like, is he going like too real, right? Because they talk about, in some of these interviews, they talk about how corrupt the IOC and Thomas Bach actually are, and how corrupt the CAS, which allowed Valyeva to compete, actually is. Like, are they going in too deep?
Yeah.
With some of this, right? And you wonder, like, Netflix has all of these global sports documentaries, right? Are they looking to get into multi-sport, especially as Netflix becomes bigger and more powerful than some network TV? You have to wonder, like, is this...
They're trying to play nice. Yeah.
I don't know. It was just, come on. You have an Oscar-winning film.
One of those other services will take it in a second.
They haven't taken it so far, right? And what is the reason?
Okay.
What is in that film, right? Like, there's something that, and it's really not about the Russians as much as it's about Rodchenkov's path to get asylum, is what it's really about, like the aftermath of what happened to him, because, you know, he's in protective custody. And it was interesting is that I was listening to an interview of Lance Armstrong interviewing the director. Lance, who fully believes he did nothing wrong, was telling the guy, oh, you were doing drugs you didn't have to do, right? Oh, Lance's ego is unbelievable. But
yeah, Cheryl, yeah.
They were talking about how Thomas Bach was saying that he never saw the film Icarus for like a really long time, except that his lawyer sent 4 letters. Like,
tell him to stop it.
Like after it was released. So, like, all of this collusion going back and forth. And they were...
Icarus was big in our world. Did it get a lot of attention outside of sort of these?
I mean, I think enough that it won an Academy Award. I don't think that it definitely played a role in Russia being banned from future Olympics, right? But there are so many different things in this interview that they were talking about. I mean, they talk about how China cheated at the Beijing Olympics, which that's the one where the gymnasts were allegedly underage, but they were talking about how they evaded doping and they wouldn't have tests. So that was interesting. And then they were saying that the IOC used part of, remember when the athletes had to petition, I think this was before Pyeongchang, they had to like go before the CAS and say that they didn't have positive tests, right? And they were saying that like each one had to be like verified, and there was this weird thing, they had to be like invited in. But they were saying that because they had changed all of the doping samples, none of them would have positive test results from the past, right? So the only evidence of them would be if Grigory Rodchenkov was at these hearings to testify against them, and they didn't invite him to any of the hearings. Like, this all happened behind closed doors, and they said that he wasn't available. His lawyer claims that he was.
Yeah.
So all this stuff was like really fascinating. You're like, well, maybe this is why some of this wasn't
picked up. Yeah.
Picked up. I don't know. Like this is thinking about what it was.
So like the movie was at a festival. Is it the kind of thing we could go in the theater and see, or it's
It was in the festival in December at Telluride, but you wonder like, and like, it's one of those content directions, like our content direction has changed in terms of our strategy, which could mean a whole number of things.
Yeah.
Space issues. Yeah. We've decided to go in another direction.
Yeah. I've used that as like
What did Star Andrew, what did Star Jones say? The View has decided to go in another direction. The show's 10th season. I will not be present, right?
Like, all right, gonna need the full story on that one at some point.
Yes, going to need the full story. Yeah. So, and then there's a great Irina Rodnina interview, which ties into all of this, but she's so great too, because Irina Rodnina openly hates Tarasova. Like they have a big feud for decades, even though she was her coach. And she goes, something is not right with the Tutberidze camp. It's obviously the coach and the doctor, which we know, but she's also playing dumb like she doesn't know, because the doctor works for the Ministry of Sport, which works directly for Putin. So again, it's like more obfuscation.
Yeah.
And like she doesn't know about the doping, but she's also a part of that same system. And, she's one of the original athletes who came back from having a kid to
just win a gold. Yeah. Yeah. Impressive. Impressive she's talking about it though, actually.
It is. She said that she coached Sasha Cohen at one point, but stopped because Sasha had a mind of her own, which I don't remember. She was comparing her to Sasha Trusova and was basically calling her uncoachable. But I like that Rodnina.
Very different results.
Rodnina, is responsible for something with figure skating within the government, but then every time they ask her if she's watching a competition, she says that she's not interested in watching. So that's a unique personality herself. And remember, she is in the Russian government, and her daughter has worked primarily for liberal US media outlets for years.
Yeah.
Well, how does that work? That's all like power.
That Christmas dinner conversation. Yeah.
Like, what is her daughter doing now? Does she report on Putin? And like,
it's complicated.
That's fascinating, right? Yeah. Just, more little things going on. Yeah. Hold it edge, it looks sexy.